Hey, this next speaker is a friend of mine. His name is Mark Lee. Is Mark around somewhere? Here he is. Mark Lee played football for the University of Arkansas. He is a physician here in Bella Vista area in Rogers. And I want you to really take just a few minutes as he talks to you about a man and his strength. It's going to be a great conversation and a great talk. He's going to ask you some pretty significant questions. But just take time and listen to what Mark's got to say. And man, this guy loves God and he wants to reflect him authentically. So here he is, Mark Lee.
Well, thank you. Before I get started, I want to just say a little disclaimer. I'm going to be talking about strength and fitness, and anytime you do that, it's easy to step on people's toes, to discourage people, but I want you to know my heart this morning is one of encouragement and no contempt, no condemnation, because we're going to cover a very important topic. So I just want you to know that's my spirit, is to encourage you, okay? So I want to inform you about an epidemic that is in our midst. Now, you're probably not aware of this epidemic, but once I make you aware of it, you're going to see it everywhere. And what is that? I'm going to introduce this by telling a story. The story is of something I see commonly in the office. I'll just say this gentleman's 38 years old. His name is Robert. His wife made the appointment for him. The wife just did not like the way things were going. He was not his old self. He sits in the chair. He's kind of slumped over, a bit discouraged. He says, "Doc, my wife sent me this. She says I'm irritated, irritable, tired. My sex drive is down, and my penis doesn't work anymore." So I'm a doctor. I can say that in public, okay? And he says, "I need my testosterone level checked. And can you give me that Viagra?" So this is a common story. This gentleman's situation is extremely common. What happened? This once 20-year-old virile macho man is now sitting before me and wants to be medicated man. What happened? This once warrior spirit now has a weak spirit. He's victimized by circumstances. He wants a quick fix. This once can-do spirit is now a can't-do spirit. I'm too tired. So I'd like to talk to you about this. I want to begin this discussion by pointing out a picture in this next slide. This is while I was sitting on the beach in Florida. I love this picture because my wife loves the beach. I love it for about 10 minutes. But as I'm sitting there, I was just watching people go by, and of course in swimsuits, so you get to take a look. But this is the common thing that you'll see with this epidemic. First of all, we'll look at the younger gentleman, because this is kind of 20 years apart. He looks like he's in his early 40s. First of all, he's got a cool hat on, shades, and a cool-looking beard, so he's got that going for him. But just notice a few things. First of all, notice the thin arms. The forearms are almost as big as the biceps. Notice that the trunk, how he's got a lot of, what do you say, beer belly, so to speak. He's got that barrel chest. And then if you look down here, if you could, he's got the thin waist. If you could see his legs, they're going to be pretty thin and pretty underdeveloped. This gentleman here, very likely by age 40, has probably got hypertension. He probably has the beginning of diabetes. And certainly erectile dysfunction begins here. Now this is his mate. I don't know who it is, his friend. I don't know how they're related, but this is 20 years later. Now this gentleman probably has all those things I just mentioned, plus he's probably had his first heart attack, if not stents in his heart, from these metabolic processes that have started here or earlier. So what's at work here? Hypertension, diabetes, erectile dysfunction, elevated triglycerides. These are metabolic processes that have been initiated by lifestyle. These metabolic processes, if left unattended to and keep going, these are what lead and significantly contribute to heart attacks, strokes, cancer, dementia. Now, we still have a lot to learn in these areas, but this is a significant part of it, this type of body build and this type of lifestyle. Now, here's the not so good news. The medicines that we give, although you might think they do a lot, they do very, very little. to change the course of this situation, okay? They offer about a 2% benefit. If you have diabetes, hypertension, have artery disease, the medicines we give reduce your risk for heart attack, stroke, and death by 2%. That means 2 people out of 100 will benefit from taking these medications, okay? Now, their doctors are not going to tell you that. This is one of those things that really needs to be said more because the medicines just don't work that well, but it's all we have. So let's address this issue, this epidemic. And first of all, I want to let you know everything I'm going to say from here on in is on a one-page kind of Cliff Notes type thing. Just sit back, relax, because you're going to be getting a lot of information, and it's all there, okay? So just absorb it, and we'll provide the handout for you during the talk or after. First, I'd like to start with this. As we begin to talk about physical strength and spiritual strength, this definition of manhood has helped me a lot. Some of you might be familiar with it. And it says this: real men reject passivity, accept responsibility, lead courageously, and live for the greater reward, God's reward. I wish I had that compass setting in my early 20s. This is one of those things I wish I knew. So in this definition, you'll see this idea of leads courageously. So the next slide is what I'd like to focus on. Lead courageously. Real change, to be courageous in this area of manhood, you need to realize that without an intentional plan, that's a key idea, without an intentional plan, our lives will drift into an unhealthy place. If you go with the flow when it comes to strength and when it comes to just life, it is going to drift, not in a good direction. It's going to drift to an unhealthy place. So, you're going to lead many things in your life, and I'd like to encourage you to consider this. The most important thing you're going to lead in your life is yourself. You need to own that, take responsibility for it. You are the leader of you. Next slide. In 1926, Earl Lederman argued that every man should have the strength to save his own life. The strength to save his own life. He came up with 5 benchmarks. So here's the test. You can just take the test privately on your own. These are the 5 benchmarks. A man should be able to swim a half mile. He should be able to run top speed for 200 yards. Number 3, he should be able to jump over an obstacle that's waist high. He should be able to do 15 to 20 pull-ups. He should be able to do 20 to 25 dips. Those are the 5 benchmarks that he set and said, if you can do those things, you can save your life. Of course, this is a wartime situation, and he's saying we need men like this in our army. So, the question to you and me is, could you save your own life? Strengthen a man's soul. First of all, I would like to say this before we start getting into specifics of strength, is this: a man needs to feel capable and able to feel good about himself. If you think about your life, this is probably very true. For you to have confidence in an area, you need to feel as a man capable and able. As that sense grows that you're capable and able, your confidence will go up. And I would tell you one of the benefits of working on strength is your confidence will increase. What happens in a man's soul? This is a rhetorical question. What happens in a man's soul when he realizes he doesn't have what it takes when he should? So I'd like to talk now about physical strength. And I'll tell you this, if I would have known this when I was younger, it would have saved me a lot of time, a lot of money, and several injuries, okay? So I'm really excited to share these things with you. And I know a lot of you already have ideas and exposures about this. In our culture, there's a lot of misperceptions and flat out not truths that exist around this area. But I'm going to hit some key points for you, okay? Because I'm going to argue as a man you should be strong. And you should work on being strong, both physically and spiritually. So here we go. Building strength takes a lot of effort, but not a lot of time. Now that might shock you. If you do it efficiently and intelligently, you can get very strong, and it's not going to chew up a huge amount of your time, okay? When it comes to building strength, there is a lot of BS out there. Now, by BS, I mean bro science. You know what bro science is? The familiar laugh. You're in the gym, you see this guy over here that's ripped. You go up to him and say, bro, how did you get like that? And then all of a sudden he's going to tell you this long dissertation of how he eats and how he lifts and the stacking and the this and that. And so you say, oh, I'm going to try that. Because we're under the deception that if it works for him, it'll work for me. So I'm going to do what he does. And that's how we learn, right? That's bro science. I'd like to encourage you to be a little more intelligent than that. Now here's something that shocks people. It shocks when I tell them in the office, is this, because this is not something the culture is saying at this time, is that strength is more important than cardio. Exercising for strength is more important than cardio. The research supports that all the way through, okay? For the length of your life, strength is going to be more important than cardio. Now, I did not say cardio is not important. I tell folks, if you're going to devote an hour of exercise or 45 minutes, make 80% of it strength training, 20% of it cardio, okay? So, and if you do, I'll come to this in a second. All right, the simple principle for muscle building is this. It's very simple. If you think about how people tan, I know you guys probably don't tan, but watch how the ladies do it. They've got this idea figured out, and this is how muscles grow. First, there's a stress of the lift, right? Then there's the recovery phase where you rest. During that recovery phase, there's metabolic processes that occur that your muscle now adapts and gets stronger. The next time you hit it, you stress it again, but a little harder. Then it recovers, adapts. Stress, recover, adapt. So what would that look like? You want to build your bench press. You go in there, you start at a moderate weight. You do 5 sets of 5, which I'll come to in a second. Next time you come in, you increase it by 5 pounds. And you keep on that linear progression until you hit your genetic potential. And then if you want to get stronger, there's some other things you could do to manipulate that idea. But that's it. It's stress, recovery, adaptation. Stress, recovery, adaptation. So, I would encourage you guys to devote your life and your time, not your life, but a lot of your time to get strong and maintain it through your life. Most of when you hear about the elderly being frail and weak, most of the time that's just atrophy over time of an unexercised body, okay? That can be prevented. The falling and the hip fractures is all part of that. So what are the core exercises? You don't have to do a bunch, and you might be familiar with this. You don't have to do a bunch of exercises. A lot of the stuff you see in the gym is just, I'll just leave it at that. There are key exercises to do, and there's some are just a waste of your time, okay, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. The core exercises, deadlift, squat, this will be on the paper, bench press, shoulder press, pull-ups. If you had a man doing those things on a regular basis with a plan of growth, that's really all you need, okay? And those are tough exercises, but they're very good, and they're very holistic. Now, I'd like power cleans, you can add those in. Dips are good, you can add those in. Rows are good, you can add those in. Sit-ups are okay, but if you were to pick 5, those are the top 5. You do 5 sets of 5. You rest 2 to 4 days, depending on your age, and then you hit it again. So there's some great websites out there that I recommend, and it's on the sheet. What you might be familiar with one of them. How many of y'all are familiar with Art of Manliness? Anybody familiar with that one? Okay, that's an excellent website for good instruction on eating and exercise. That's not his main thrust. He's a very holistic guy. He's a good guy, Brett McKay. The next one is startingstrength.com. Anybody familiar with that? Great place to go for how to do those lifts, because when you do these lifts, guys, if you're saying, okay, I'm going to start doing this, you really need to do good form for maximizing strength and preventing injury. Startingstrength.com. Recently, I came across Gravity Transformation, and he's got a YouTube video there of 7 exercises to do, which fit in line with what I just said, and also 10 not to do. What are the benefits if you lift hard, if you lift weights and build your strength and build your muscle mass, which I would encourage you to make part of your life? It increases your testosterone levels, okay? That's really the only way. All those boosters on TV are a bunch of crap. I hope you all know that. You can't, they put a sports figure on there, they put this on there, they make a statement. It's BS, okay? All the studies show there's 3 things that increase testosterone level. First of all is losing weight. Secondly is lift hard, get a good rounded diet of good protein and fat, and a good rest. Those are the things in studies that have shown increasing testosterone levels. Okay, it increases mood. When you exercise, you release your natural anti-anxiety medicines, or chemicals, your natural antidepressants, your natural anti-pain. Your sense of well-being goes up, your confidence goes up. Women like a man of strength. Guys respect and admire fit men that are strong. Now, that's not going to work if you're a jerk, but usually if you carry yourself, look fit, like you take care of yourself, you garner respect and some admiration. And I think that's important for a man's soul. So, real quick on diet. We currently think it takes about 10 to 15 years of crappy eating before you begin to develop the negative effects of that. So a lot of guys in their 20s are probably eating not too healthy. They're not feeling the effect of that. I usually see them in the 30, 35 range when these things start to come home, and the tiredness and the muscles atrophy and the weight goes up and the blood pressure starts going up. And that's just a result of the previous 10 to 15 years. So diet. You want to significantly reduce your sugar. You want to significantly reduce your crappy carbs. And I think the easiest way, as I talk to my patients, of what is a crappy carb. If you're opening a box to get to it, it's likely a crappy carb. If you're opening a bag to get to it that's air-filled, it's likely a crappy carb. If it's in a wrapper of some sort, it's likely a crappy carb. Now, there's exceptions, but 95% of the time, those will hold true, okay? Those are really what put the weight on. There's 2 things, the crappy carb sugar and volume. Those are the 2 modifiable factors that really have been shown over time that really put the unhealthy weight on us. If you're going to build muscle, you got to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight a day. This is difficult to eat. You're going to have to drink it. Whey protein is probably the best thing to do because it's got all the amino acids in it. There's a lot to say about all that, but really, if you're going to try to eat that much protein, you're going to have to drink some of it. And then creatine, monohydrate, regardless of what you've heard, it has been studied endlessly and found only to be helpful and not harmful in any way, in about 10 grams per day. They're starting to do research at the NIH looking for other benefits of creatine on chronic neurological processes, chronic pain processes. So this has got a lot of attention, and there's a lot of study. There's nothing dangerous that we know of at this time. All right. Cardio, I would say this about cardio as a guy. If you're going to choose cardio, choose something to do that you like, but I'd also just think about this. Do something that might have some practical value for you in the future, like boxing, jiu-jitsu, Krav Maga. You know, I've been doing Krav Maga for the last couple of years, love it. It's good cardio, and it might be practical if I ever had to use something, okay, or defend myself. That's a skill set that gives you some confidence that if it's something like that came to pass, and hopefully it wouldn't, you would have at least an idea or some skills in that moment. So if you're going to do cardio, why not choose something like that as a guy? A lot of guys don't like running. Guys aren't going to play basketball. You know, choose one of those things that'll make you, give you a skill. All right. So I know that's a lot of information. And of course, I'll be hanging around here all morning if you guys want to talk. Remember, all this is on the piece of paper I have for you. So I'd like to transition now to talk about spiritual strength. But before I do, I want to show you something, this next slide, to summarize this physical strength part of it, is this. This is really, you know how a picture's worth 1,000 words. This will wrap up our physical strength conversation. This is an MRI of the quads, the mid-thigh of a person. And as you know, MRI, CTs, they kind of make slices like this, like a slice of bread, and then you take the bread down and you're looking at it on end. So this is the thigh of a 40-year-old athlete. On the outside, you see the white. That's his skin, a little bit of fat. All that gray matter in there is healthy, rich muscle. That black area is the bone of the femur, and that white area is the bone marrow. That's a 40-year-old triathlete. Compare that to a 74-year-old sedentary man. Look at his thighs. This is what happens over a 34-year period with a sedentary lifestyle. Notice the white, there's a bunch of fat in here. Now, muscle does not turn to fat. That is not the case. But this all dark, unhealthy, disorganized, dark stuff here is muscle, and not much of it, and very weak, very sick. And then you can see the bone and the bone marrow in there. Quite a contrast over 30 years. Guys, I would like to suggest to you that this is all of our destinies unless you do something intentionally and active to prevent it. When you see those folks in Walmart that are older, and I take care of a bunch of them, that are on canes and walkers and they're thin, this is typically what their thighs are going to look like. Very little muscle, very little strength, very little endurance, and very frail and easily fall and break bones. Next slide is also telling. Here again is our MRI of our 74-year-old sedentary man. Same picture. Here's a 70-year-old triathlete. Look at that. Pretty impressive, huh? You see the white outline of the skin, the gray muscle mass, which pretty much looks like close to what the 40-year-old looked like, the bone and the marrow. Quite a contrast of progression over a 30-year period, right? So we all have that potential. We don't have to end up here. We all can end up here. It just takes persistent, consistent work over a period of time. So let's talk about spiritual strength, because there's a lot of similarities between spiritual strength, how that's acquired, as well as physical strength. I'm going to start with a question. What are some reasons as to why we struggle to do the good and right thing on a regular basis? What are some of the reasons, this is a rhetorical question, what are some of the reasons that we struggle, as to why we struggle, to do the good and right thing on a regular basis? Why is that? Why is that struggle present in every human being? If I put before you here 225 pounds and had asked you guys to come up and deadlift it, probably some of you could, and most wouldn't be able to, okay? So we just asked you every day to come up and do that, and you'd fail every day. That is a sign that you need to be strengthened, right? That's a sign that those muscles are weak, but you could do that. You could go through a process and not too long be able to do that. Think of just life and the decisions we make. It's the same thing. You're confronted with decisions. Decisions are where your strength comes from. You have to train that to get strong. So, spiritual strength is a different kind of strength that is built similarly to physical strength. It's intentional. It's cultivated by consistent and persistent habits of life. When your intention and habits go, your strength goes. Physical strength and spiritual strength are realities that are rented. They're not owned. And the payment is due on a daily basis. And it can be done. See, it takes spiritual strength not to engage in porn. It takes spiritual strength not to be enslaved to anything. It takes spiritual strength not to be controlled by anger, by desire, by feelings. Those are all very important. Anger is a part of life, desires, feelings, but not to be controlled by them. It takes spiritual strength to have a good marriage, to be a good husband, to be a good father. It takes spiritual strength to be a good employee. It takes spiritual strength to manage your finances wisely. It takes spiritual strength to hold your tongue. It takes spiritual strength to be a loyal and good friend. It takes a lot of strength to hang on a cross as an innocent man and to say, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." That strength that Jesus demonstrated there was not just in the moment. That's a life cultivated of healthy heart, habits, and a mindset. That in that moment, he demonstrated incredible strength, spiritual strength. See, as followers of Christ, when we decide to be a true disciple and learn from him how to live, we are called to engage in transformation, to change, to grow in strength. Paul says that in Romans. He says in Timothy, discipline yourself. Peter says, be diligent in these things. So, as followers, we are filled with God's Spirit, and we can share in his strength. That's one of the great things, realities that we have access to, is we can tap into God's strength. In this verse here, in 2 Timothy, it says this, God has not given us a spirit of fear and weakness, but one of strength, love, and discipline. See, we are called to be men of self-control, of wisdom, of loyalty, of perseverance, of sound mind and thinking. We are called to be men of freedom, of love and peace and self-sacrifice and service. These are the qualities of spiritual strength. We are called to grow in spiritual strength and power. And I'm going to close with this verse just to highlight a few things. This is Ephesians. We're not going to go into great detail, but this would be a great study because you could talk about this verse for quite a while. But I just want to show you in this verse as we read it, I highlighted in red the calls to strength. I highlighted in blue the actions you must take to get strong. And that's what it is. You have to intentionally pursue some things and include it in your life if you want to be spiritually strong. Let's read it. Finally, be strong in the Lord and the strength of his might. Put on, there's an action, the full armor of God so that you'll be able to stand firm against the orchestrated plans of the devil. For our struggle, and we talked about one of the reasons that the struggle's there of not being able to consistently do the right thing, it's a struggle. This is part of the reason. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up, there's an action point, the full armor of God so that you will be able to resist in the evil day, having done everything to stand firm. Stand firm, therefore, having girded, there's action point, your loins with truth, having put on the best breastplate of righteousness, having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. In addition to all, taking up the shield of faith, which you'll be able to extinguish the flaming arrows of the evil one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Man, there's a lot there, but the key points is this. We're called to strength and power, and there's habits that we need to have in our lives for us to be spiritually strong men. See, part of the reason we struggle to do the good and right thing is because there's an orchestrated effort to deceive you, to deceive us, to pull us away from the fullness of life that God has for us, to rob us of our strength and power as men, to make us spiritually weak. That's why you can't go solo. You need a team. All right, so here's my concluding slide and this concluding thought to leave with you, both visual and idea-wise. Real men are not passive about spiritual or physical and spiritual strength. I would encourage you all to lead your life courageously in this area of physical strength and spiritual strength. Thank you.